Welcome to 10 Years Out, Stories from My Queer Community. Tonight, I'm here with Stacey Chomiak, my friend that I think we met 10 years ago at
the
GCN conference, which I've talked about in the previous 2 episodes of this podcast too.
Really? That's amazing. Amazing.
So Stace is here tonight. Thank you for coming. You're zooming in from somewhere in Western Canada, right?
Yes. I'm zooming in from a city called Chilliwack, which is like about an hour-ish outside of Vancouver. So cool. Close to the border, Western Canada, all that kind of stuff. Yes.
Nice.
So happy to be here.
Thank you. Okay, so what are your pronouns? How do you identify? And how long have you been out?
Yes. Great questions. My pronouns are she, her. And I've been out for, math. Since 2010. I identify as a lesbian. And 2010 is when I came out. So I guess that's like coming up on 13 years, which is, I don't understand time. So yes, I guess that makes sense. But it feels long and short, as you can probably agree with, I'm sure.
As life can. Yes.
Yes, that's true. Exactly.
And I am your host, Sam. I identify as queer, and my pronouns are she, her. Ta-da!
Yay!
Okay, so Stace, what do we need to know about your story before we talk about what you've learned in the last 13 years?
Yes. Well, how do I nutshell like the whole coming out process? Basically, the Coles Notes is that I grew up in a very evangelical family.
Wait, pause.
Yes.
In Canada, you call them Coles Notes?
Oh my word, what do you call them?
Cliff's Notes.
Oh my word, really?
Yes, it was Cole. I don't know who Cliff is.
That's amazing. Okay, I feel like I want to Google this because I wonder if that's just like a me thing or if that's a Canada thing, because I swear there's like a Coles Notes thing, but now that you say Cliff Notes, I know someone has to Google that because I now I feel like everyone should start saying Coles Notes.
Sorry, I had to. Cole is much cooler than Cliff.
They're both C's. Yeah. But there are some interesting Canadian American like differences, like working with American clients and stuff. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's a thing. It could also just be a weird Stace thing. So
well, either way, I love it, and I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, interrupt at any moment. I love that. So the Cole/Cliff Notes would be that I grew up in a really like conservative evangelical family, like middle class, and I grew up in Winnipeg, Manitoba, which is like an hour from the US border, like right above North Dakota. And so like prairies, winter, minus 40 Celsius in the winter. So like I was like this super good Christian girl, like very kind of, I called myself like vanilla. I like followed the rules and didn't swear, didn't drink, like kind of was just like a do-gooder. And I thought like, this is pretty easy being a Christian. Like I'm, I don't know, like I wore like the Christian t-shirts and stuff and was like, I'll just like witness to my friends at public school. And then around like 16, I was like, I started to have feelings and I didn't understand them because my whole life was church. Yeah. It was like youth group and church camp and like all my friends were Christian and I didn't even know the word homosexuality. I didn't know the word lesbian, like heaven forbid. I didn't know. It was also like, I'm older. I'm sure I'm older than you. So this was pre-internet, pre-Google even. So I couldn't like Google quietly something at home. I just was like, what are these feelings? And I didn't really have attractions or feelings for boys like my friends did, So I just noticed I really liked being around girls. And anyway, around 16, 17 is when I began the journey of like slowly discovering, okay, I think there's some attraction there. And then of course being totally terrified because how can I, like very Christian do-gooder Stace, like have these like sinful feelings for women? Like it terrified me because, growing up in a Christian home, especially evangelical, the fear of hell is a real thing. Mm-hmm. It's a terrifying reality. So basically in the nutshell, Cole Cliff Notes, is that I struggled like crazy, like deeply struggled within myself for about 13 years, from like the age of 16, 17 until I came out at 30, and finally reconciled with my identity and my faith. And that was, a very up and down roller coaster journey of closeted relationships and shame and guilt and turmoil, and ended great because I ended up, making peace with both, but it was not an easy journey to get there. So that would be a very small version of what happened.
Yeah, that's great. I can relate to a lot of that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
We met at GCN for a reason.
No kidding. Oh my word, yes. And actually, I don't know, like you probably mentioned this in previous episodes, but GCN, Gay Christian Network, is now QCF.
Mm-hmm.
Q Christian Fellowship, right? Yeah, I guess. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just rebranded, but like, yeah, just like such a niche community of like us who grew up in that faith. And like, there's a specific kind of journey and a specific kind of like overwhelming shame that comes from the sexual journey in the faith community. So that was revolutionary for me to find those connections in that community. Yeah. Because I was like, you just felt like you're the only one, right? And then you're like, there's other people like me that feel these things and have wrestled in this way. And it was, that was life changing for me, for sure.
Yeah, it was interesting when I lived in Berlin for 4 years. Oh. I was meeting people from all over the world, a lot of European, and Australians, just, a lot of people.
Yeah.
And very few of them were Americans. And so I would be telling my story or like parts of my story to them. And I would get to this part of like the evangelical Christian part and the shame of me not realizing I wasn't straight until I was 29, and then all of the whole upheaval that came along with that.
Yes.
And none of them like understood it. And I had this realization that none of them were going to understand it. Like 99% of people over there were never going to understand. Whereas in a lot of America, in a lot of the US and I guess North America, a lot of people are going to understand because we have such an Christian evangelical tradition.
Yeah.
And it's like so public.
Yes.
But over there, it's so different. And at first, it was a really lonely realization for me. Like, these people are never going to understand this part of me that was so... I mean, the second biggest thing that's ever happened to me, maybe the first. I mean, the first might have been like entering the church in the first place, and then the second was the second one was realizing I wasn't straight, and then leaving the evangelical church.
Yeah.
But so at first it was a lonely realization, but then I realized, well, maybe this is an opportunity for me to get some distance from this thing that has always been in my face, like this evangelical identity that I've never lived without.
Yeah.
Maybe this is like freedom / I don't know, not freedom in like let's go do whatever I want, but freedom in like, maybe it's okay everyone doesn't understand it. Maybe I can get a different perspective on life and have a different paradigm, basically.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Like, and even for you to reframe it for yourself, like, what does this journey look like for me, my sexuality, if I do remove the evangelical part of it? And because that is constantly, or was constantly forced in our journeys and in our stories and in our experiences. And I know as a Canadian, like we're very saturated with American culture, and especially the American evangelical church, focus on the family. My parents, were obsessed with. And so all of that is just like constant presence. And so to go to a place, I'm sure it would have felt lonely to not have that. But then also what an invitation to be able to like see everything differently, because like, whoa, what does this mean? If this doesn't matter, what does this mean now? It's a whole other way of looking at it that I'm sure would have felt like a more freeing, for sure.
Yeah. So
That's so interesting.
yeah.
That's cool.
So okay, what have you learned since coming out?
Oh my word.
What do you
Yeah,
want
I've
to
been
talk about?
yeah. I've been thinking about this since you like posted about this and kind of having it ruminate in my head. And I mean, there's so much that I've learned in my journey, you know. So when I came out, I immediately, almost immediately got engaged and very soon after got married. So and have been married and am now going through a divorce. And so that's a whole life transition. And also have had 2 children. So becoming a parent, a queer parent in there is also its own journey. And I just think overall, it like encompassing that whole entire, the last 13 years, the most important lesson that I have learned is to trust my intuition and to trust, like, you know, Glennon Doyle talks about like your knowing inside of you. And I think that really, for me, as I reflect back on my whole journey, even from 16, it was my knowing inside of me that was like, you like girls. It's okay. You like girls. And I was like, no, 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 it's not okay. I was like taught and told to fight back against that voice because we can't trust our flesh. We can't trust ourselves because we have sinful natures. And so we can't allow ourselves to just like want what we want. Like Mary Oliver says, like, want what your flesh wants and let yourself feel good about that. And so in my journey of like reclamation and liberation and listening to like the truth within myself and seeing that as a beautiful creative expression of who I believe like God made me to be, like I wish I would have trusted myself sooner and been able to really not only trust myself but believe in my own goodness, because that's a difficult thing to truly believe, I think. And it has, I mean, really, I have fully started to believe that in my entirety, I would say in the last few years only. And that's why I feel now today like the most authentic version of me. And it's taken a long time to get there. And me being gay is obviously a huge part of that, but it's the way that I see my own life and the whole world itself. So that, yeah, that's kind of a maybe a vague answer, but that's really the biggest like thing that I've learned over this last, you know, many years.
Yeah, no, that's good. Was it a conscious process that you went through, or did you have mentors along the way who taught you how to listen to yourself and like how to recognize your voice?
That's such a good question. Yes. I mean, so inside of me since I was little, I've always felt a need or like a desire to live authentically. I've always felt like I've always, you know, wanted to be creative and felt creative and just had a desire to like express myself and to do things that are meaningful. And I've always felt that, you know, we all just get a life and it's very short. And so I want to do things that matter with it. And so I have always wanted to listen to what is the nudging inside of me. And then when my sexuality came into the, you know, my life, and I was like, oh, this is something I have to like get through or like get over or push aside, that was competing with my voice. And then once I realized and of course initially started therapy with like a Christian counselor who was like, you know, helping me on the ex-gay path, which a lot of us go down. And I did that for a little while, and that's very soul destroying. So thankfully I didn't continue that and found a different counselor. And so through the last, you know, 10, 13 years, I've had a couple different very, very important therapists that have helped me foster and cultivate this curiosity about myself. And what, you know, what does this, because that's the other thing I was going to mention is I have learned in the church that there's like, you know, good and evil, there's black and white, there's good and bad, and there's inside of us there's good and bad, and this sinful part of me was bad and I had to try and get rid of it. And when I was learning through therapy that like actually all parts of you are good, that you need to embrace that, and like what a beautiful invitation for us to be able to sit with ourselves and say like, oh, I have compassion for that part of me that felt overwhelmed with shame because she was taught that you couldn't be who you are. And having that compassion, softens those parts of us so that we can discover what's underneath that. And what is underneath that is what we want to do in our life and what we want to say and how we want to say it. And so I've absolutely had, really important mentors in like a therapy standpoint. And, there's so many amazing podcasts out there that help us like, cultivate self-awareness and meditation and open up, what does faith mean to me? And so I think there's just been a lot of natural progression and growth and expansion in my own life and in my faith journey too, that has helped me to come to the place that I'm at and slowly begin to trust myself. And I think just through decisions in my life, seeing the fruit of my own decisions has helped me remember like, okay, yeah, I felt that for a long time. And then I finally had the courage to do that. And I mean, the most recent one for me is ending my marriage. And that was an extremely, extremely difficult thing to do that no one else would have told me to do. Only I knew inside of me. And eventually I had to just listen to me and know that my own truth is the only thing that I can listen to, and that everybody else's voice is going to be there. But just like my sexuality, I have to listen to what's inside of me and be authentic to that. And that's it. And let things, let go of things. So that's something I'm always learning. And I learned that first with my sexuality. And then as we go through life with hard things, you continue to learn these things,
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a long-winded answer.
Nah, you don't need to apologize for any answers being long or short.
That's good to know.
I think a lot of people have trouble trusting themselves.
Yes. Well, that is the thing. Like, I don't know how you have felt with that specific thing, because it's just difficult to, I think it's one thing also, it's difficult to listen to yourself and actually understand is that you talking, or is that influences of like other people saying what you should do or how you should do, or like, and then listening to like, what am I actually saying? What do I actually want? I really did struggle with that for a long time to decipher, is this my voice? Or is this external voices of society or things that I think I should want that I don't actually know if I want?
Right.
It's really, it's about knowing yourself truly. And that's a difficult journey, actually. And especially when you grow up in a faith that tells you what to believe and tells you who you should be.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's difficult.
There's part of me that really likes being spoon-fed truth.
I know. And that has been one of the biggest gifts of my sexuality, I've found, is I can't just accept things as they are. It's starting with my faith. Like, it didn't work for me anymore because my faith that I was taught said I couldn't be a gay Christian. That doesn't exist. So then I'm now forced to like tear apart everything and examine each piece before I can put it back into something that fits for me. And that actually is a lot more beautiful than the structure that I was given. And that's also hard to do, because then everything feels really scary and shaky, and like, what do you believe? Like, what does that mean? That's a scary journey, but it's such a beautiful one if you allow yourself to just step by step, build it for yourself.
So other than therapy, what has been influential in you hearing your voice, recognizing your voice, and then believing your voice? I
can't avoid my book, I guess. I can't avoid speaking about, not that I'm trying to, but
why would you avoid it?
That's just the biggest thing that comes to mind, because
I would like you to talk about your book.
Sure. Still Stace right behind me. That was something that I was on the train into Vancouver for work one day, and I have, since coming out, I had been thinking about, how can I tell my story, because I struggled for so long to reconcile it. And I just thought I didn't have any gay Christians to look up to. I didn't have anybody I could talk to. And I would love to just give some assurance to somebody that they're loved as they are, and like put out something that would help one person. So I was on the train and I kind of thought like, oh my word, I should maybe do a book, like just for my kids or a couple friends. And then I remember in that moment when I thought that, I remember hearing like a voice inside of me that said, just start drawing, just draw like thumbnails. And I was like, well, it can't hurt to draw thumbnails. So, so I just started drawing and then like the next thing kept happening when I came home, like just do like a concept illustration for yourself. And I was like, okay, I'll just do that for me. The next thing was like, why don't you email like agents? And I was like, okay, I'll email agents. Things just like kept happening. And it just felt true inside. And it was like a nudging that like I was scared to share publicly, but I just felt like I've always kind of thought like, why not? Things are exciting to like, what's the worst that can happen? Like no one will email me back and nothing will happen. So I just kind of followed this like breadcrumb trail of like my own voice, I guess, or the universe or God or whatever, to the next thing. And then before I knew it, I had an agent and then we then got a book deal. And then all of a sudden I had an editor and I was like, oh my word, this is going to be a real book. And it was so shocking to me that this is something that can happen. And I remember through the whole process, it was, I think it was 2019 when I did the first sketch, and then it came out in 2021. So it was 2 years from the very beginning to the end. And there were moments during it where I was like, I don't like, should I be doing this? Like how do I write? What do I write? Like, how much do I share? Is this even relevant anymore? Is anybody going to, be helped by this? And I would always, in my practice with therapists and friends, like remind myself to center myself. I would get out in nature. So I would go on my bike or I'd go for a walk because it's just so centering to get out in nature. Take a moment, like just take a moment and just listen for what I felt or what I heard inside. And I would always feel or hear a message of like, just keep writing, just that authenticness that you want to express. That's all you have to do. You don't have to write it for anybody else but yourself and the one person who maybe can use it and be helped by it. And so I just continue to follow that. And again, like getting out in nature is one of the most important things for me, to continue to center myself and ground myself in my own life.
Yeah.
And, less time on social media, less time with those voices and to remind myself that I'm not living to make decisions out of fear. I'm living to make decisions to be brave and to be courageous and be authentic. So I knew there would be pushback on putting the book out. I knew there would be people who didn't get it, but it's not for those people, right? It was for the people that I believed it was for. And it was for the voice inside of me that said, just write and let go of it. And so that has literally been, something I can hold, something that's tangible, where I was like, oh my word, I listened to this voice inside of me and it became a thing. And so what else now can I do, or what else am I supposed to do with this voice that is just true and just wants to express and just wants to love? And that is kind of now what I'm wondering moving forward.
Maybe another book?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Hopefully. I mean, yes, I'm working on, a few books. I'm working on a few things. And everybody's got something inside of them that they need to express and should express. And everybody has stories that they need to tell, and we can learn from each other. And I think so much of us are scared to express that and are scared to be honest about that. And I know for me as an artist too, the whole comparison thing is scary. Like, oh, my art is maybe not as good as this person, or maybe my writing's not as good as, like, you got to just kind of tell that to go to hell and just do your thing.
Yeah.
Because you're the only you're the only way that can express the way that you do. And that's needed in the world. So
totally.
You just got to do it.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Artists are the gatekeepers of truth. I heard that quote recently.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Yes.
Oh, I could talk to you about that we're going to have another conversation. Just to talk
I'm here
about,
for it.
Just talk about art and connecting and nature. And
yes. Yeah. Oh my word. Yes. I love that conversation.
We could start a club.
Yeah. Oh yes. I would love that too.
I have another idea.
Yay! Oh my word! That would be seriously exciting.
Okay,
Honestly.
all right. Okay, we're gonna pick that up. Yeah. Okay, so what do you wish people understood?
Oh, yeah. This is a very large question that I'm sure there's so much to say about this. But I really think that I wish people understood how difficult it is for the queer person to embrace themselves.
100%.
You know, I and like to understand when it's okay for them to be their authentic self. I think society has come a long way. Church has come less, but is coming slowly. And I think there's some, like, I don't want to put it on straight people, but there's some people that say like, oh, that's great, you're gay, that's great, like, cool, moving on, like, no big deal. And there's still this like really huge internal journey that so many queer people have to continue to go on, where they may have like internalized homophobia, where they may have trauma, where they may have questions, where they aren't sure. And I think sometimes it's difficult to find those safe spaces to discuss all of that that's going on, because it's like people around you sometimes are like over it, like, okay, old news, but you're still trying to process and deal with all of the things inside. And that's a really difficult thing to be honest about within yourself, and then with externally with people around you. And even now today, I'm involved in a lot of groups where, you know, people in 2023 are still getting kicked out of churches for being gay, are still ostracized by their families for being gay. Like, this is still real and like a reality for so many people. And I wish people really understood how difficult that is, because it's not like no one is over it, you know, by a majority. There's a lot of people that are still really struggling, and to have that like compassion and to be able to like respect and see where each other are on that journey is such an important thing, you know, especially now moving into Pride Month and having these discussions, right?
Yep. Yeah, and I mean all of the legislation that's coming out against trans people and
I know
transitioning and care for trans people, like it's
so scary.
It's not over. The fight is not over.
No, I mean, exactly. Everything feels like it's going backwards in that way. And talk about like not having a safe space, and like there's so much polarity around it, and there's so much like anger from certain communities around it. And like I just wish, like, this is a separate thing, I guess, but I wish that people understood how intensely beautiful queer people are. And in my experience, especially like trans people, there's such a deep beauty when you can understand that about yourself, and when you can express the way that you are supposed to be in the world, and that people can actually see that for who you are and recognize that. It's so beautiful. And so many people completely disregard that journey and aren't able to see that. And that's such a huge loss, I think, when we can't stop long enough to like actually see each other. And, you know, that's what I wish people could do a bit more, because there's so much pain, right, and loss and sadness and difficulty in the world already that we can't prevent,
right? And
we can prevent a lot of that if we just slowed down a bit and had a lot more empathy for each other.
Stopped being so judgmental and thinking we know everything about everything.
I mean, even like me as a queer person, like I probably have tons to learn from you as a queer person. Like, everybody's journey is so different, and just like actively listening to each other is such an important skill to like learn and foster and practice, and especially in this like very polarizing world that we live in, right? And I think it's only going to get harder in that way.
Yeah. If you could go back to your past self, what would you say to her?
Yeah, well, I did this quite a bit because I feel like I wrote the book for her to go back and especially when I after it published, and I recorded the audiobook, and I really felt like doing that I was able to go back to all those experiences and sort of heal with her. And I think the biggest message that I would tell her is like, believe your voice inside, and she is good.
Mm.
That because that is even hard to hear now from myself, because it was such a deep like belief that I'm not good.
Right.
I'm just, somehow I'm flawed, and I have to be fixed, and I can't believe myself or listen. So, that takes a long time to unravel and unwind and reprogram. So yes, that's what I would say. And now I believe that, but it's taken me, a long time to get there.
Yeah. That's great. I think a lot of people would struggle to say that about themselves, queer or not.
Yes.
There's a lot of therapy in that.
Oh my word. Oh yeah, that's true. I guess some of that money did go to good use. Yeah, yes, I agree. I mean, and like, being good doesn't mean you're perfect. I mean, and we all have the capacity to be terrible people and to make terrible decisions, and we still are good. I think inherently people are good. And like, our authenticity and our wanting to do things in the world is good, and the knowing inside of you is trustworthy, and that is the biggest lesson for me.
Yeah, that's so interesting. This theme of goodness has come up in every podcast I've recorded so far. Yeah.
No way.
Totally.
That is so interesting. That is so interesting. Have you found that in your own journey? Like, I'm curious about that.
Honestly, I haven't thought about goodness until the first person brought it up 2 episodes ago.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah. That's really, really interesting how the themes,
I'm going to have to think about it more.
Yeah, you should bring it up on the next one, or the next time someone brings that up. But I mean, I know this isn't in the thing, but I am curious for you, like, what has been the biggest like takeaway or theme that you've kind of come back to after all this time?
From the last 10 years?
For yourself. Yeah.
In my reflection, I think part of the reason also, in true transparency, why I didn't start doing this series as an Instagram series that was focused on me was because when I sat down to start thinking of things I've learned over the last 10 years, I was like, gosh, I don't know what I've learned. Like, how do I don't know. I mean, a lot of it's going to be, could be sad. A lot of the things could be sad, like things I've learned about people, or things I've learned about culture, or things I've learned about how judgmental I was before I came out, how I wasn't accepting, or just judgmental. I was super judgmental. I realized that almost immediately upon coming out was how judgmental the evangelical church had made me.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Because I thought I was right about everything.
Yes.
And
I hear you.
I was going to love people, but like, I was still going to be right about how they were wrong.
Yeah, totally. Oh my word. It was kind of like, it was sort of like a pity love. Like, oh, you don't know the truth. Okay, let me help you. Like, it's so ridiculous. Like, how dare we have that mindset, right?
I know.
And I'm with you. I'm with you.
That was the first thing that I learned, I think.
And that's a beautiful thing. What an opportunity to grow into being a more wholehearted person.
Yep.
Right? That's a beautiful invitation that I don't think I would not have gotten to had I not been queer.
Right. Exactly. Yep. I think the thing that has been a journey for me that I can point to over the last 10 years is the journey of becoming proud of who I am.
Oh, yeah.
Which I still think I'm on that journey. Because in certain situations, I'm more afraid to fly my flag. But I'm way more proud. Like, I remember the first prides, like the first few years that I was out. I can remember thinking, I don't know if I'll ever feel pride for this part of me. I don't know if I'll ever feel pride for who I am, and like the way these other people seem to feel pride about it. And I can definitely say that has shifted over the last 10 years. And I've beautiful. Become more proud for sure. I don't know if there's ever like you've reached ultimate pride, but
yeah, I mean, I think that's such an interesting conversation in itself, because what does pride mean to each person who's queer? Because for me, I sort of liken it to like, I celebrate this part of me, and that would be how I would say that I'm proud, is like, right. I'm so, and that has grown for me as well. Like I feel like every year I'm able to stretch my arms out a bit wider and take up space and not apologize for taking up the space, and right. also just celebrate that I am this version of me, and this version of me gets to do these things because I'm this version of me, and to just like exist loudly.
Yep.
And that has been a journey as well. And I think for every queer person, again, especially from coming from the church, that is a progression of an acceptance within ourselves. And as we accept and as we start to bloom and flourish, then it becomes more and more of a celebration.
Yep.
And yeah, so that's a beautiful thing to recognize too.
Yeah, that's what I would say to like young queer people these days have different things happening, and maybe some different struggles. Maybe it's easier to be out and proud, but it definitely depends on the community.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's what I would say to a young queer person today, is that, you know, even if you don't necessarily feel pride now, it will probably grow. Like, don't write it off yet.
Yes.
Don't think you're going to be like ashamed or scared forever.
Yeah. One little thing at a time to like lean into. Yeah, exactly. It made me think of, I spoke at a queer festival in February in a different city in BC. I had to fly there, and I did like one of the talks I did was at like a school, and this one person came up to me after. I was like, oh my word, this like a high school student or something, and gave me this like beautiful handwritten note with like a picture drawn on it, and just said like, you know, thank you for your book, and like, you make me feel like I can be brave in the world in my life. And like, those are like, that was such a like full circle moment for me to be like, oh my word, this is the thing, right? This is why we exist loudly in the world, is so that we can fully realize our own lives, but also so that we don't know who's watching us and who's looking up to us and who's seeing us, how we act and what we say, and how we walk through the world, so that they can then feel courageous to step into their own lives.
Yep.
And that's what I would want for everybody, is to be able to recognize their own like flourishing, you know, to do what they need to do in the world, and that's hard to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, for sure. It's a lot of different journeys going on.
One of the I've already have a Facebook post figured out for one day of Pride Month. I don't know which day, but it's going to be something like hello friends who have children. Some of them are going to be queer.
Yeah.
Or what, I'm just going to say queer.
Yes.
It doesn't matter what you believe. It doesn't matter how they're raised. It doesn't matter. Like, I'm going to say all these things don't matter. Some of your children are going to be queer. If and when you or they need to talk to somebody, I am here.
Yes.
Because it's so important.
Yeah. Oh my word. Yes, exactly. That is the thing too. I've also tried to do that, just like put myself out there, and you know, if people need someone to talk to, because like that was the thing I died to find. I was just, I want to talk to one person who I could confide in, and like I didn't have anybody. So just like sometimes that one person can be a lifeline to somebody. Yeah. And that can make the entire difference, right? And why would we not want to be that for somebody? So yeah, that's beautiful. I look forward to that post.
I have a request.
Of course.
Will you send us off with a favorite passage from your book?
Oh, a favorite that I should read?
Yeah. or quote. What I mean, if you have it memorized.
I'm going to find the part when, okay, here's, I don't know, for people in video, here's the moment when I got peace about being gay. Illustrated. So, okay. So here's the moment where this is what came to me. Here's the moment when I felt peace. So I'm praying in this moment and I said, please God, I want to yell and say that I am gay. I want to lay it all down and I want you to bless my life. I held my breath and listened. A tingling started on the top of my head. A warm sensation slowly began to wash over me. Softly, like the sun gently kissing my skin on the first day of summer, it began to travel down my body. I heard a still small voice reply to my innermost being, yes, yes, a resounding yes. In that moment, a soft peace rained down on me. Gently at first, then it gave way to a torrential downpour. I felt it washing away the years of chaos that had lived there for so long. Peace.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing what you've learned in the last 13 years.
Oh, my pleasure, Sam. Thank you so much for inviting me. It was so awesome to chat about all of it.
And all of Stace's links are going to be in the show notes. So if you want to follow her or buy her book, you'll be able to do that.
Yay.
Thank you for listening to another episode of 10 Years Out. And until next week, I hope you have some peace about who you are and how you are made, because it is good.
Amen.
Bye.
Bye.